I'm Moritz Hundhausen. I'm the head of Brussels office for the Foundation for Family Businesses and Politics. Today, I'm going to meet Sandra Parthie. She's also head of Brussels office, but for the German Economic Institute. Sandra joined the Institute in 2015, and she gained her political and economic experience in university degrees from Montreal, Canada, and Berlin. Today, Sandra and I are going to talk about how to foster economic competitiveness on the European level. And that talk will base on the suggestions from Mario Draghi in his famous report, which he released by last year. So, stay tuned.
Hallo Moritz.
Hi Sandra.
Machen wir richtig hier. So. How is life?
Very interesting and very nice. Thank you. How is yours?
Yeah, I like the sun, so that helps to actually deal with all the madness that, of course, is daily life here.
Sandra, we have a couple of questions for you regarding your work in Brussels.
All right, let's hear it.
Working in Brussels is especially interesting for me because
it's so international. That's what I really like. You have people from all over, not only Europe, mostly there, of course, but from everywhere.
Sandra, if you would describe the EU in one word, which would it be?
Great.
And a personal question, Sandra. A place you especially enjoy spending time in Brussels is?
That's the Cinquantenaire, or the Jubelpark, as it's called in Flemish.
Yeah.
I do spend a lot of time there. I go running there. There's so many festivities. It's a park.
Sandra, you've been representing German economic interests in Brussels for more than a decade. From your perspective, what's a big misconception that people from outside of Brussels have on the political work happening here?
Well, I often hear that Brussels is aloof, disconnected from the real world, intransparent, impossible to understand. And I do think that's a misconception. There is a lot of transparency, sometimes more than on the national level. We get an annual work program from the Commission. So we really know what they are planning in the first quarter, the second quarter, etc. of every year. We can prepare for that. We can contribute to that through consultations. We get the amendments from the European Parliament. So when the parliamentarians are discussing legislative proposals, we can actually see what they are discussing because we can go to their meetings. We see the texts because we actually have access to these amendments. So we really can follow the discussion step by step. So from my perspective, it's actually very transparent, much more transparent than a lot of the national political work.
Sandra, in 2024, Mario Draghi released his well-known report on fostering economic competitiveness in Europe. Do you experience that the European Commission is already sufficiently addressing the suggested measures and steps that Mario Draghi reported in his analysis?
Well, I would say according to the work program, it actually sounds pretty good. However, it's not only the Commission that needs to follow up on what Mario Draghi has been describing. It's also the governments of the member states. Yeah. And there, I'm a bit more skeptical, I must say. The Commission is proposing lots of activities. They have a number of strategies for the single market, for especially also the capital market union, for a lot of different aspects that are really important and that have been, of course, highlighted by Mario Draghi. Nonetheless, it's not only the Commission that decides and makes things happening in the end.
Yeah.
So if the national governments are not playing ball, it's going to be difficult.
Mario Draghi suggested a lot of measures in his report. From your point of view, where are the biggest practical hurdles in the implementation of those measures? And the key question, where could those 800 billion investment money that Mario Draghi urgently suggested to foster economic competitiveness come from?
Yeah, these 800 billion, it's really a difficult question. The EU's budget is a fraction of that. So what the EU actually can put on the table is nowhere near 800 billion. So that means the money needs to come from member states, from national budgets, but also it needs to come from the private sector. Yeah. And that means Europe has to become an attractive place for business again. How do we do that? Especially with the much more red tape that we have here in Europe. that we have accumulated over decades, that makes it really tough for companies to invest, for governments to attract investments from abroad, and to actually implement all that, which is the biggest hurdle in the end. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's just very difficult to actually do it.
In the annual report of the Scientific Advisory Board of our sister foundation, the Foundation for Family Businesses, Professor Felbermayr, the very renowned economist, suggested that the productivity can be raised by 7% in the European single market by taking down trade barriers between member states. In a nutshell, do you agree and do you think that fostering and strengthening the European single market can be a sufficient response to the ongoing transatlantic trade dispute and the tariffs that potentially come with it?
Yeah, I definitely think the single market is the key answer to any threats on the European economy, be it the tariffs, but also other regions that might not be necessarily friendly towards the national governments, towards our member states. The single market is really our asset. And there's also other numbers from the IMF, for instance, who are saying that if we really were able to use its full potential, we could slash the equivalent of 44% of tariffs, perhaps. 110% when it comes to services. So there is a huge potential in this, and it's frustrating sometimes to see this, to be aware of this. And the progress is so slow, and there's so much that is not being used in the interest of our economies. So yes, from my perspective, it definitely is an answer. And I think this is where we need to really put our efforts now collectively, here from Brussels, but also from every capital.
It's great to hear, Sandra, that you remain optimistic and that you make it clear that Europe has answers and has strategic response points. It just needs to address them fast and consequently. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you, Moritz.
And
That was
enjoy
really nice.
the sunshine in Brussels
same
as
to
rare
you.
as it is.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.